Okay, we're gonna try the cool lighting because I like the vibe. Executive dysfunction has been kicking my ass recently, and when I'm feeling like this, the best thing to do is always to just reread some of my favorite books. And unfortunately, almost all of my favorite books are by Courtney Summers. Courtney Summers is a Canadian author. She's been in the business for quite a few years. Her first book, I believe, was published in 2008. Her more recent books have been a little bit more mainstream. She's definitely not on the same level as like Stephanie Meyer, where a lot of people would know her name. So I thought I'd just make a video recommending all of her books. Hopefully I make them sound interesting enough that at least one person watching this video will pick one up, and that's my only goal, is just to make at least one person pick up one of her books and try reading them. Oh my god, I'm looking like right into the light and it's making it hard to read my notes. So I'm gonna read off the list of content warnings, and if there's anything in this list that it makes you uncomfortable or you're not able to engage with, please click off of the video, because all of her books basically have at least 5 of these things in them. Big trigger warning for sexual abuse, sexual assault, child abuse, child sexual assault, substance abuse, general violence, specifically violence against women, foul language, suicide, suicidal ideation, depression, eating disorders. Am I missing anything? I have like a ring of light burned into me from my ring light, and I can't read my notes. I first found her books when I was 14 and looking for an existential zombie book. Somehow, by the grace of all the reading gods, I found This Is Not a Test, and I've loved her writing ever since. I've read everything she's ever put out. Something about how blunt and blatant her writing style is. Now, I would say it does get into the poetic, but it's never really flowery or purple prose. She really uses simplicity to her advantage, and something that I think I loved mainly about her writing is that she doesn't shy away from flaws in characters, making a character unlikable or making them do exactly the opposite of what a good, decent person would do. When I was a kid at 14, still reading like Warrior Cats books, seeing a female character say, "Fuck this, I hate everyone and I hate everything," was the first time I realized that women could do that kind of shit. And so her books have been really influential on my life. We're going to start with Cracked Up to Be. This was published in 2008. This is her debut novel. We're going to go in chronological order. The main character, Parker, strived to be the perfect person. She was a straight A student. She had the perfect boyfriend. She was captain of the cheer team. She was the head bitch in charge. But the book is split between the present narrative and flashbacks to a very traumatic night where Parker's best friend Jessie goes missing. As we follow Parker through her flashbacks, we find out more and more what happened to Jessie and what Parker's involvement of her disappearance was. In the present day, Parker struggles with alcoholism, substance abuse. She has attempted suicide. She is currently suicidal and depressed. She's flunking out of school, and she's trying to get everyone in her life to replace her with something else. Her ex-boyfriend is now dating the new head captain of the cheer team. Her parents now have a puppy. Everyone in her life has something else that can take her place. She's trying very slowly to erase herself from everyone that cares about her. It becomes increasingly difficult, though, as everyone in her life refuses to let her do that and tries very hard to explain how much they care for her, even when she has been shitty to them the entire time. Parker is not only dealing with the trauma of what happened the night Jessie disappeared, but she's also dealing with the burnout of this high expectation she put on herself to be the perfect person. I don't know if this was Courtney Summers trying to imply that Parker had some sort of OCD. This was written in the mid to late 2000s, where OCD was just kind of neat freak. Parker does have this like obsession of being perfect, and what we see of her now is this sloppiness that she's never let herself be before, and she finds a weird freedom in that sloppiness, even though it's self-destructive. Some Girls Are was published in 2010, and it follows Regina, who was the mean girl. This is basically like Mean Girls meets Heathers, but also doing its own thing, kind of. Regina is part of the popular girls. Her whole identity is the fact that she is the most popular girl's best friend. Regina has the second hottest boyfriend. She has the best group of friends friends, and the entire group is more than a little bit of a bully. In the very beginning of the book, we're at a party where Regina is playing designated driver. Being the only sober one, she tries to get some peace in a room away from the rest of the party, where Anna's current boyfriend tries to assault Regina. Now, Regina's able to get away, but she's freaked out and she goes to another kind of friend who's not really at the party. Regina confesses what had just happened to her, and the friend the next day tells the entire group that Regina was not assaulted by the guy, but had tried to hook up with him consensually, and Regina experiences a freeze out. Because she now has no friends and everybody in the school already hates her for being a bully, she finds herself alone at the loser table talking to somebody that she has tormented throughout high school. Regina herself has to grapple with the fact that she has no identity outside of being Anna's best friend, and what little identity she did have, she killed for being outside of the norms of the popular kids. She also tries desperately to find absolution from these people that she has hurt over and over again when she was the bully, and they do not give it to her. They do not want to give her redemption because she doesn't deserve it. She hasn't changed. She just doesn't have the privilege of being a popular girl anymore. It also showcases the intense bullying, the two rival groups, Regina with her one friend that she's able to have, and the popular girls that are fighting with her. Their pranks and bullying just increases in intensity until it is violent, and it shows how much bullying can increase to a suicidal pressure. I love that we start with such a flawed character, and that she, through these horrible changes and this trauma that she goes through, has to find the reason she was flawed and fix that. That's just kind of Courtney Summers' thing, as she writes about the unlikable female character. I think growing up reading all of these books where flawed meant being the literally violent bully, it makes it very hard to read current books where the flaw is that the girl is too nice. Fall for Anything was published in 2011. This is my least favorite, I think. I think it is the least favorite. I read it once, 10 years ago, and it's one of the only books of hers that I don't have a physical copy for. One thing Courtney Summers loves to do is give weird names. So we had Parker. Regina's kind of a normal name, and then this character's name is Eddie. I think it was short for something. I'm not exactly sure anymore. But Eddie's father recently committed suicide, and Eddie is trying to find out why. She really can't understand. He was a successful photographer, he was a beloved mentor, and he had a loving family who was really close to him, and yet he still took his own life. And this book really explores the specific type of grief you feel when you lose a loved one through suicide, because there are just so many questions, so many things that you ask yourself, and it's just this horrible, unanswerable grief. I mean, all grief is horrible, but this is a very specific type of grief that comes with losing a loved one through suicide. She meets a former student of her father's, and he finds some sort of what looks like a clue that might explain why her father was so tormented and decided to take his own life. And so she and this boy go on this quest, I guess, in order to find why her father took his own life. One of the reasons I don't like this book as much is because the twist betrayed my trust so much that I swore I would never read it again. It's not a bad book. It's not her weakest book. It's a really, really good book, but the twist inside of it really hurt my trust, and I didn't want to experience that ever again. This Is Not a Test was written in 2012. It is actually the first book that I read of Courtney Summers, and then I read the entire rest of her books. Imagine this. You are me when I was 14 in some random half-price book in Louisville, Kentucky, or Lexington, Kentucky, somewhere in Kentucky, I don't remember. And zombies were all the rage. There were zombie TV shows, zombie games, zombie movies, zombie books, but every zombie book was too adventure focused. Every zombie book was too much about killing the zombies and finding a cure, and I just wanted a zombie book that sat and talked about zombies and just sat in this silence, and I'm walking through the aisles of this random half-price books, and on a random cart in the middle of the aisle, I find This Is Not a Test by Courtney Summers. Sloane is a victim of very intense physical abuse at the hands of her father. The only other person who understands and knows what's going on is her older sister, who she's very close to, and because of this abuse, they've isolated themselves from the other people in their lives, such as friends from school, classmates, teachers, and they keep their abuse secret because it was their abuse that they shared. Together, they wanted to run away once Sloane was 18. But once her sister turned 18, she just up and left, and Sloane has been dealing with that loss and being the sole victim of her father's abuse all by herself. And at the start of the book, Sloane is actually attempting suicide. Before she can do that, zombies attack. We flash forward, I think it's like a week, and Sloane is with a pack of schoolmates, and they have run into the school and they've barricaded it, and now they are just living in the auditorium of their high school, trying to keep safe from the zombies. And then the rest of the book is just kind of them sitting and talking about life, and Sloane trying to experience life for the first time without the abuse of her father, but also trying to live in this apocalypse. And everyone else is hell-bent on survival and trying to survive, and Sloane just wants to fucking die, and nobody will let her, and nobody understands that she just wants to be out of this world. And it's not because of the zombies. She's kind of wanted this for a while. Sloane often laments about this life that she never got to have because of the abuse that she experienced. She's actually living with a girl that she was kind of friends with in high school, and they went on a sleepover, and it was the one peaceful night that Sloane has ever had, and it was the first time that she saw a functional family. Sloane hates that she never got to have that kind of life. Other than that, there are a lot of the normal zombie tropes, like somebody being bit and having to watch them to make sure they don't turn into a zombie, and then this isolation in an apocalypse, and then the survival instinct and, surviving in a post-apocalyptic world with monsters and stuff. So that's kind of run-of-the-mill zombie stuff. I think what makes this book very special to me, and I've talked about this before, but it really helped me understand the things I was going through as a child with my own family drama. Nothing compared to this book. It was very, very minimal in comparison to what Sloane, the character, goes through. It really helped me understand the complicated relationships I had with the people in my life who had been hurting me. Please Remain Calm was published in 2015, and this is the only sequel so far. It also is a novella and only came out online, so I only got to read it once. My Libby app does not have it. This book is the only male perspective we've had so far. Reese was the, I guess you would say, love interest for This Is Not a Test. They get separated, and Reese struggles to find this girl that he is the only thing that's keeping him alive, and she just wants to fucking die, and he's trying to keep her alive, and it's not helping that she's super depressed and won't tell him why. This book really gives you that different perspective of survival. Sloane, obviously, the lie down and rot kind of survival, and this one is no, we have to push through for our loved ones kind of survival instincts. That's actually something I've written about before in my own creative writing, not to toot my own horn. Fun fact, This Is Not a Test was rumored to have been adapted or in the process of being adapted to a made-for-TV movie. This was right before streaming became really, really big. A script was in the process of being written, but nothing had been greenlit. And I just want to say that news came out in 2015, 2016. So if there has been more progress on This Is Not a Test, I'm talking to you, Canadian filmmakers. If there has been any more progress and this is secretly being greenlit, and any casting directors happen to find this video, please cast me as Sloane. I will rub all two of my acting abilities together, my little acting skills. I'll rub them together so that I can play Sloane, and I swear I will do a really, really good job, because no one understands her character like I do. I think I'm the only person in the world who understands, maybe Courtney Summers understands her more, but I'm the only person in the world who's not the author that understands this character, and I would do such a good job, I promise. Okay, now that I've embarrassed myself, casting directors, I'm free for hire. Not free. Well, I'd do it for free. Yeah, you don't even have to fucking pay me. Just my name in the credits. That's all I need. All the Rage was also published in 2015. And this is the first one that really went mainstream. It got a lot of awards. Now, this one is about rape and rape culture. It is all about that. It has on page slightly fade to black rape. I don't know where I saw this. I'm really not exactly sure. Courtney Summers, in like a Tumblr blog or like in an interview about her books, she opened up about how when she started writing her debut novel, she was recovering, I guess, from being assaulted, and writing these books have helped her on her like healing journey. I really think that's special, because obviously it's coming from a place of experience, which is awful, but you know, she's telling her own story through these characters and explaining the things that she went through. And this book specifically is about how people and society makes you not talk about being raped and being assaulted and experiencing these things because of the shame and because of how they'll brand you as a liar, ostracize you, especially if you're pointing the finger at like the golden boy, you know. I think this is a very, very important conversation to have, and I'm glad that Courtney Summers was so open and raw about this experience. Rami, or Romy, I think it's Rami, was raped by the town golden boy. And actually his name is Kellen Turner. This book was published the same year that the whole Chanel Miller, Brock Turner thing happened, where he only got 6 months, I believe, even though it was like a very, very violent assault with many witnesses, but he was the promising young boy, and Chanel Miller never really got justice for that. This also was published in the wake of the Me Too movement, so it was just a really, really cultural discussion we were having about rape culture. Rami, the main character, is ruined by speaking out about what happened to her, and the entire town calls her a liar, says she just said it for like attention. They bully her. To me, this book was more of a literary novel. I think it's labeled as mystery thriller because there is this idea of like another person is rumored to have been hurt by the same man, and you know, more and more people are, you know, coming together and trying to speak up but being shushed. But to me, it was more of a literary exploration of rape culture. Rami herself has to go through the struggles of life after being assaulted. Like, she feels like she has no control over her body. Something that she does to try and keep that control is she's always wearing red lipstick and red nail polish, and she does it like with perfect precision, and if it chips at all she has to redo it, and that is like a way that she reclaims control of her body. She also struggles with intimacy. Not to get too spoilery, but there is a point in the book where she's, you know, kind of flirting with this guy, and things are getting a little more than flirty, and at one point she gets really scared and she says no, and the guy stops, and she is wowed by that because that's the first time she's been intimate with a person and he has stopped when she said no. Sadie was published in 2018. This is like the most disturbing one in my opinion. Sadie is actually more of an experimental narrative because it's split between Sadie's narration as she's on her journey and then like the transcript of a radio show that's covering the disappearance of these two sisters. Think like NPR, but also true crime. So it's like this guy's going and interviewing the family members and trying to understand what happened in this town, what happened to these sisters. Sadie's younger sister is found murdered in a burned out barn. Shortly after her body is discovered, Sadie herself goes missing, and people don't know where she is. People don't know if she's alive. That's what the radio show host is looking into. Like, where did Sadie go? Is she still alive? What we find in Sadie's narration is we very quickly discover that her mom's now ex-boyfriend, but boyfriend of many years, was sexually assaulting Sadie when she was a little girl. This book makes me so... Sadie knows that this man killed her sister, and she is on a mission to find him and bring him to justice. This book is really hard to talk about. This book turns my tummy. It was really, really difficult to get through because I'm not saying it's on page, really. It is on page, but like the way Sadie speaks of it, because it's her trauma, that she's not really able to fully word all that well. So she doesn't, but you know what's happening and what's going on in the scene, and so you're like, it's really gross and it's really disturbing to read, which I think is the point. It's like that good kind of disturbing where it's disturbing in a way that's supposed to be saying something. Some other things, Sadie herself has a stutter, and I don't know if it was ever explained why. I think she just had one. I think maybe it was a learning disability or a developmental disability that she had. Sadie also lives in a trailer home. She and her sister, her mom, not grandma, yes grandma, I think grandma, lives in a trailer home. And something that Courtney Summers does is she writes class disparages in such a relatable way that it hurts me. I was somebody who grew up in a struggling household. There was always talk of, money and food and things like that. Sadie, all the rage, I'm the girl, which we're going to talk about. And then I think even This Is Not a Test kind of really delves into the envy that you feel when you look at well-off families, and not even like rich families, just like families that are better off than you, families that don't have to worry about food, don't have to worry about paying all of the bills. That kind of envy, that specific envy you feel at seeing those people and the carelessness they have with money, and the rage that you feel when you understand how the cycle of poverty works. But it hurts me to read. It really does. I hate reading it because it's so relatable to me specifically. You just know when you look at those kind of families that you're just different, like you're just lower than them, and that's something that I've had to overcome in my adulthood, and I just hate it. I really loved the experimental transcript structure of this book because it sets up a huge twist that is just heart-wrenching. And once I got to that point, I had to put the book down. I was like, I can't continue this. This is too much. This book is honestly disturbing and sad, emotional and dark. And something with Courtney Summers is she doesn't always have a conclusion. Like, there's an end to the book, but you don't really get to see a denouement, as they say in the French. You don't really get to see the characters after the climax. The climax just kind of happens. The project was written in 2021, and this is like known as the cult one. This is probably my favorite one. I don't really know, because I really, really like This Is Not a Test and Cracked Up to Be for nostalgia purposes, but this one is just like the most intriguing one so far. She's still writing, guys. But Lo is an 18-year-old journalism intern or assistant, but she's not where she wants to be, and she promises her boss that she can get the inside scoop on the local cult. When Lo was younger, she was in a car accident that killed her parents and left her very, very, very injured. She has like a huge scar on her face. And while she was in the hospital, her older sister, B, was in a very vulnerable and emotional state. And she meets this guy who's the leader, the owner of this thing called Project Unity, or the Unity Project. I can't remember which one. B essentially cuts ties with Lo and joins this guy full force in this project that he has, this charity organization thing that he does whatever. And Lo has been trying desperately to get in contact with her sister, who's basically cut all ties with her. More and more recently, it's almost as if her sister has gone fully MIA, off the grid. Nobody kind of really knows where she is. So she confronts the guy and is like, you guys are a cult. I know you're a cult. I'm going to expose you. And the guy's like, you can search all you want, but all of those like cult allegations, they're all exaggerations of, you know, bad reviews that people have left. We're not a cult, but you know, you can search all you want. If you find anything, obviously I don't mind you writing about it, but like, you're not going to find any. As we see Lo get like kind of deeper and deeper in the project and finding out what it is, what it stands for, the book kind of splits perspectives, and we start seeing B in the past, finding out more and more what the leader stands for and what he does and what... No, Tito! Not athletic enough to jump on that. This is not like horror movie cults with the creepy people and the human sacrifices and the midsummer stuff. This is really, really more like real life cults and how they manipulate vulnerable people. Like there's a lot of research into this, and you can tell Courtney Summers has kept it more and more realistic. That is what makes this book like really creepy and special. But this book does have, in my opinion, one of the most closure scenes. Like its epilogue is given the most closure, so there's that for you as well. Her most recent book is I'm the Girl, which was published in 2022, and I have a little bit of embarrassing trauma with this one. Honestly, I read it the most recently, but I don't really remember that much of it. Like, I forgot the girl's name. Her name is Georgia. She is the daughter of a low-class cleaner. Actually, her mother recently passed away, but her mother was a cleaner at this like high-end resort that has very high-end clientele and hires these very, very specific, attractive women to be their like workers, right? To be the, you know, the eye candy in this resort. And there's a name for them. I forget the name. But Georgia wants nothing more than to be one of those girls. And she has a connection to the owner of this resort. Her mother was a cleaner for them for many years. She really, really wants to be in this group, and the guy just won't let her. Her mom never let her do it. Georgia really wants to be a star. She wants to be a movie star. She wants to be a model, and she's very naive and very, you know, I'll just get what I want because I want it kind of person. Around the same time this happens, the body of a 13-year-old girl is discovered on the side of the road. She had been brutally assaulted and murdered. I don't know, at some point, like, Georgia found the body, and so because Georgia found the body, the older sister, like, insists that Georgia helps her figure out who would have done this to her little sister. And Georgia's over here just like, I just want to be the assistant, the personal assistant to this rich man who treats me very nice, and his wife gives me jewelry, and I'm going to be adopted and then made into a movie star because they're rich and they have ties with movie producers. This is Courtney Summers' first foray into LGBT representation, which is always good to see. It's often compared to Sadie, so, you know, take that with a grain of salt. We know what Sadie is about, so think about this. All the Rage was very much part of the cultural conversation about rape culture. I feel like this one is very much the cultural conversation about the dark Hollywood underbelly and how people take advantage of young, naive, underage girls with promises of them being a model, being a star. That's kind of the cultural idea that this book is examining. Now, I've talked previously about the library incident. I don't know how many videos I've talked about it, but I've said something about the library incident. And the library incident, I'm ready to talk about it. It was about this book. So I read this book. I've read all of Courtney Summers' work. I read this book just last year, and I was triggered. I was triggered by this. I thought that this was a little too adult to be shelved next to Percy Jackson, you know? So I told the library and I said, hey, I think this should be moved to the regular fiction section and not in the YA section because it is about child sexual abuse and it's like on page, and I feel like that could be triggering to young kids. And so I became a little bit of a Karen and talked about censorship, and the library basically was like, because it's a public library, you have to make an appeal. So I made a formal appeal, and they basically got back to me and were like, no, we don't find this to be inappropriate at all. And I was very embarrassed because I already am like very anti-censorship and I want to talk about these things. My line of thinking was just that this was accessible to young children like 12-year-olds looking for, Percy Jackson, who might stumble upon this book and be introduced to a horror that I don't think that they could understand. And that's why I was like, you should put a content warning, or you should move this to the regular fiction so it's not right next to where kids can get at it and things like that. And it actually wasn't until Reads with Rachel's video on, I think it's called Identical. She made this wonderful video about censorship and banning books when it comes to libraries and school libraries specifically. And she used the book Identical, which has very, very much on page child sexual assault and talks about that stuff. And Reads with Rachel does a wonderful job of explaining why it's important to have these books be accessible, because in my line of thinking, I was like, this is introducing kids to a trauma they don't need to know about. But Reads with Rachel pointed out that if these kids that are going through horrible things like this horrible trauma, have access to these books, they can understand through these fictional books that what they're going through is abuse and is horrific and something they should tell a trusted adult about. And that was the first time that I re-examined how I was thinking about I'm the Girl and my experience with it and the library. That video was very, very helpful. Thank you, Reads with Rachel. She's wonderful, and she was very angry in that video, but she put it very succinctly in a way that I could understand and made me reevaluate my thoughts on censorship and things like that. And it really hit me like a fucking truck that I was being a Karen, not to be mean to like women named Karen, but because I just talked about how This Is Not a Test was the first book that helped me understand that the abuse I was going through was not okay, and the feelings I had about it were normal and something that I could express to other people, because the person I was reading about, this character who felt so real and relatable to me, was also expressing and experiencing these same feelings. So like that helped me understand what I was going through. And so to think that I was trying to take that away from somebody else who might have been going through something worse was horrible. And I just want to, give a big thanks to Reads with Rachel for helping me acknowledge where I was wrong. And hopefully this also helps other people acknowledge their lines of thinking. Yeah, so, books that you might find too gruesome are, helping people process trauma. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but I'm nervous. Anyway, so far that's all of the books that I have found Courtney Summers to have written. I will always read Courtney Summers. So far she has not disappointed me. She's disturbed me, she's made me cry, but she has written some really amazing books, and I'm glad I could share them with you guys. I hope that I didn't spoil anything too much and that you guys are interested enough that you will maybe find your next favorite author. But yes, that's it. I think that's it. Okay, bye!